Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we continue to talk some NBA free agency. I want to take a look at the top players remaining. This wasn't necessarily seen as the overall best class in, free agency history, but there are still a number of impact players. We saw the big names of Paul George and Klay Thompson go off the board yesterday. There were some other impactful players as well that were sort of shuffled around. The Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to Orlando deal, or some other sort of marginal things. I meant to mention this earlier as well when we were talking about the Warriors, but I do actually sneakily, if he's healthy, really like the DeAnthony Melton to the Warriors deal that they signed there. So, we've seen probably the majority of names fly around, but at the same time, there are still a number of players out there that could be contributing players on good teams. So I want to dive into who is still out there available. Now, the number one name, of course, is LeBron James. We know he's not going anywhere. He's going to be sticking with the Lakers. Obviously, one of the big questions is how much is he going to sign for? There were rumors that he would be willing to take a pay cut to help the Clippers, or help the Lakers, that is, try and acquire some extra talent. But I'm not quite sure necessarily how many players out there would be worth taking a pay cut for. One of the names that was thrown out there, though, was DeMar DeRozan. And we'll keep it brief here on this note because we just talked about it yesterday, of the idea of DeMar DeRozan to the Lakers. What he provides is just giving a legitimate, consistent third option. And I'm sure that DeMar, for almost personal reasons, would love to come to LA, being a growing up in California, that is, and, always sort of having those hopes. Now, the issue is DeMar doesn't provide three-point shooting, which is something that the Lakers obviously need, and he's also, on the other end, not necessarily an elite defender either. So he doesn't give, either of those skills, but ultimately, the Lakers, that is, it's a little bit of an argument in terms of what you think they need to improve on the most. I feel like at the end of the day, if they could get DeRozan on a reasonable price, somebody who can just go out and give you a bucket is always going to be a solid investment, especially if he would maybe be willing to take a hometown discount to go alongside LeBron James. You take advantage of the fact that LeBron is willing to take a cheaper contract as well. That might just be something that is worth investing into, but I do understand the reservations that are with that as well. I wouldn't argue that it's the perfect fit by any means, but even outside of the Lakers, DeRozan is a player that I do think can provide, he's not a number one. I don't know if he's never necessarily ever been a true number one. Obviously, some of those Raptors years in the 2010s were special, but I do think that DeRozan can, establish real playing time for himself, and not just that, but being maybe a secondary creator to a star. Now, I had talked about previously that the Knicks could maybe interestingly be a team for him to go to. Obviously, that is no longer possible with the salary cap situation. Not sure what DeRozan's chances are here, and we'll see if he does end up on the Bulls. I really hope that's not what the case is, but it would be it almost feels like it would be kind of indicative of who DeRozan is and who the Chicago Bulls are, but we'll let it be there because, again, we just did a bunch of content on DeRozan yesterday. But some other players as well that I think could be a starter or six-man on a competitive team: Tyus Jones, Gary Trent Jr., and Miles Bridges. Jones is a point guard that has been, I think, underutilized the past couple years. He didn't get anywhere near enough shine when he was on the Memphis Grizzlies, especially when Ja Morant was dealing with the suspension and potentially even the injury as well. The Grizzlies were the 2 seed for consecutive years, And their record without Ja Morant was so impressive because Tyus Jones did an excellent job of stepping up and just helping to orchestrate an offense. That's what he does. He controls the court, and he does so in a quiet way. He's not this, overly prolific scorer necessarily, but he's absolutely somebody that I think any NBA team could benefit from having. And I think that if there are any contenders out there that have an opening for Tyus Jones, I don't know. I think that the Mavericks still have their mid-level exception open. Could be interesting. Obviously, it's so Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving dependent that maybe Tyus Jones, I don't know if he's too much of a spread the ball around type of player that it would sort of cause some disruption in their offense that is often more isolation heavy. But, just an idea out there. I believe the Lakers have their mid-level exception open. The Clippers have theirs. So Tyus Jones could end up playing some really impactful minutes somewhere in the NBA next season. Gary Trent Jr., I feel like, is a little bit more of a role player than somebody, Tyus Jones could be somebody that could almost operate a second unit by himself. Gary Trent Jr., I think, is a plug-and-play type of skill set in terms of the three-point shooting, can be a reliable option for you. I spent the past couple years, I just think he's been, overall very good for a number of years now. And you go back in his career and, if I'm not mistaken here, I feel like he had at least a couple moments going for himself when he was with the Portland Trail Blazers at sort of the end of that still competitive era with them. So he's somebody that I would definitely be potentially interested in if I am a team that has an opening on my spot as well. Last year, if you look at his shooting percentages, shot 39% from three, actually, one of the higher marks of his career, and he did so on 6 attempts per game. Started 41 games, so again, either plug him in the starting lineup or coming off the bench. Eric in the comment section, Gary Trent Jr. shot 50% on catch and shoot threes. Lakers chances, again, if they could, I'm pretty sure they have that mid-level exception open, which is basically just, it's $12.9 million. It's a roster spot that was created by a previous move, and it's just something that the majority of these mid-level exceptions, and listen, I'm no expert on it necessarily myself, but I know if they could fit Gary Trent into potentially going on a one-year deal for $12.9 million, we'll see. He is still, it's crazy actually, like as I'm, on Basketball Reference here looking at it at the same time, that he is still just 25 years old. Feels like he's a little bit more of a vet, that he's been around the league for a number of years now. So I'm not sure if he's going to try and cash out necessarily somewhere as he heads into his prime. But I think he'd be a great fit on the Lakers, and he's somebody I would absolutely, if I am the Lakers, try to recruit into the building, because he's a very reliable player that I think is a very capable offensive player. So I would definitely keep my eyes on that. And Miles Bridges, obviously he has the off-the-court stuff that makes him a little bit of a pariah, and I do think that if it wasn't for, the situation, that he would have been paid big money by now by Charlotte, because he's been a 20-point per game scorer the past couple years that he's actually played, and he's had some big moments, and I think that he's capable on the defensive side of the floor as well. I understand it feels a little gross for any of these, championship contending teams to spend money in this way, but if you're desperate, he's somebody that can absolutely help a team. And again, on the court wise, I don't think there's any question about it. We just saw Kevin Porter Jr. get a contract from the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, Miles Bridges, I think that basketball skill wise is significantly better than that and could end up commanding a decent amount of money. But again, obviously the off the court stuff is something that you have to at least acknowledge in these situations. But last handful of players here that I at least just wanted to reference that I think could possibly be in the rotation of a good team. Monte Morris, backup guard, spent this past year with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Detroit Pistons. I feel like I could see him carving out a role for himself. Kyle Lowry, of course, the veteran, been in the NBA for a number of years. Kind of annoying on the defensive end, and he'll do his share of complaining and flopping maybe, but an extremely heads-up player with a ton of experience. Buddy Hield, the shooter. Kyle Anderson having a little bit of two-way ability. Still just 30 years old. There were rumors that he was maybe looking at the Boston Celtics, which would be a very interesting pickup for the Celtics there. And then Gordon Hayward as well. Obviously, never worked out for him in OKC, but maybe if he had the right opportunity, he could sort of come back to at least having some type of a tangible role in the NBA, but we will have to see there. But as all of our attention here on the GSMC Sports Podcast these past couple days have been on NBA free agency, we did also just get the beginning of NHL free agency, and I want to hit on some of the key moves and storylines that have taken place on that end as well. So that's what we're going to be diving into next, but first we have to take our final break of the show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this quick break.